BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays, Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything, that's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show, and Friday is an Anything Goes, any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. Alright, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Hello, and welcome. Today is Wednesday, and that is an Ask Me Anything, an AMA. So I'll be reading off your questions and comments, and we will be discussing several different subjects. We have a lot of Zodiac Killer comments that you guys have been leaving in, but there are also some things that have come out on a few different episodes. And the other thing to say is, today is December 30th. That's the day before New Year's Eve. So we can think of this as our New Year's episode as well, and there will be a lot of things to go through in this segment. Now, if we're going to start with a Zodiac comment, I'm going to go over to Bagel Power 23, who left one on our episode, Zodiac Killer Robert Emmett. And that's one of the few times when I've titled an episode like that, and we haven't been talking about a Zodiac Killer suspect. Instead, Robert Emmett is really just a clue in the Zodiac Killer mystery, and people aren't quite sure what it means. Before I read off the comment, I would just like to say that Robert Emmett is a name that they claim could have come from the end of the 408 cipher. The Zodiac mailed in the 408 cipher, right? The most famous one. I like killing people because it's so much fun. Actually, I shouldn't say it's the most famous one now, based on all of the press coverage surrounding the 340 cipher and David's new solution to that. But with that one, you can see that there's a line at the bottom that people aren't quite sure what it is, and it's entirely possible that that line was actually a mistake made by the cryptographer, made by the person who put that together. But one of the possible solutions was Robert Emmett the hippie, and Robert Graysmith, of all people, was putting this forward, and he even provided something in his book, Zodiac Unmasked, where he's having a conversation with Paul Avery, and Avery and Graysmith are discussing this, and Graysmith asks Paul Avery, what do you think that line of text means at the end of the 408 cipher? And Avery says, I still think it means Robert Emmett. But Bagel Power 23 would like to say that it doesn't mean Robert Emmett the hippie. He should. Let's just read off this comment here. I think it's Robert Emmett Timothy or something like that. If you read the hippie real fast, the hippie sounds like the mippy, sounds like Timothy, sounds like Timothy. In short, that it's not the exact name, but it's a close spelling to a name, maybe like Timothy or something like that. I think it's very good to give in those, given those additives, because perhaps, he could be going down the right path with this, or it's also possible that there is a different solution. We brought up one in a previous AMA that says that final line of text is actually meant to be deciphered as "Meet the hippie riot," and the Zodiac Killer was anti-hippie. The people who were there were a lot of people at the time who were very much opposed to the hippies, but this is the first time that I've heard this solution here. Robert Emmett Timothy, Robert Emmett Timothy, something of that nature, writing out the name like that. And of all people, Thomas Henry Horn even talks about this because he believes that final line of text says that it says Robert E. Smith II, and the E is just meant to be a divider. The answer is actually supposed to be Robert Smith II, the solution, I should say, rather than the answer. But it's the same type of thinking that Bagel Power 23 has written here in the comment, that okay, the person isn't going to give their exact name. They would give something similar. The person who wrote that cryptogram is giving a similar name, because what if somebody actually did figure it out? And this is one of the reasons why I said that in the 340 cipher, there's no way that it would give somebody's exact name clear as day. Like, say, for example, if somebody had solved the 340 cipher a year later, a year after it had been mailed, and you're in the fall of 1970, and somebody figures it out, and it says, my name is blank, here's where I buried this item that is relevant to the Zodiac Killer mystery, a piece of Paul Stein's shirt, Paul Stein's wallet, the Lake Berryessa hood with blood on it, then that person would be arrested very quickly. So instead, they're giving something that is similar to the name. That is a big possibility. Bagel Power 23, thank you for the comment. And now we're going to be going on to our next one, and this is a big one here from Playtime. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you guys. We could do the entire episode only on this one comment here, Playtime. Thank you for all this. And this is on our recent upload talking about the Zodiac and the Unabomber, but we also did an introduction where we read off some things from Steve Hodel. Steve wrote into the channel and he wanted to share some things, not only about the Zodiac Killer, but more or less just about his larger serial killer theory, where he accuses his father, George Hodel, of committing 25 different murders around the world, and it's really not only in the continental US, because George Hill Hodel was definitely going global. The first thing that Playtime says is, George Hodel and Man Ray were friends. Salvador Domingo Felipe Jacinto Dali, I Dominice, was the first Marcus of Dali, and Pubal was the other BFF of Man Ray. You see, now, when I was reading off that the first time, I was like, what on earth is this? Oh, Salvador Dali. Hey, come on, why didn't you just say so? Salvador Dali. But as far as Hodel and Man Ray being friends, Man Ray is a photographer and surrealist artist, and a lot of people think that George Hill Hodel is the murderer of Elizabeth Short in the 1940s, the Black Dahlia Avenger, and a big motivation for him was he didn't simply want to be a doctor. He didn't simply want to be Dr. George Hill Hodel, who is the head of the LA County Venereal Disease Unit, or whatever exact job title he had, where, yes, he's interacting with a lot of global elites, yes, he's interacting with a lot of famous people, but that wasn't satisfying. He wanted to do something that would propel him into somewhat of a different level of stardom or a different level of badass nature. I mean, I really shouldn't say the word badass. I mean, he would have been thinking that way. I mean, murdering Elizabeth Short would have been absolutely heinous if he actually did do it. But Playtime continues by saying there's a huge link to the Surrealist art movement. This goes back to Edgar Allan Poe, the artist in the mid 1800s who invented the detective story. And that's talking about the murders in Rue Morgue. And I was listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago, and these two guys are talking about how they were watching this cartoon show, and it was filled with Edgar Allan Poe references. And there's just this ape that is off in the corner, and they're like, "Hey, I don't get it. What's what connection does that have to Edgar Allan Poe? An ape, a gorilla, an orangutan? I don't get it." And then it's that I was like, come on, the murders in the Rue Morgue. That was what many people refer to as the first detective story. And what's that guy's name in it? Auguste Dupin was the name of the detective. But Playtime continues saying that the elephant in the room is the CIA Operation Mockingbird. Now, we haven't talked about Operation Mockingbird on the channel because I only can provide you one sentence of info about Operation Mockingbird, and that is that Operation Mockingbird is when the CIA is doing media manipulations, when they're putting out misleading stories, or they're trying to control the thought process of the general public, the populace, and all of that. But I think that I have to learn more about that before I can give too much commentary. I mean, like I said, I can only really give one single sentence. However, I know this is going to sound a little bit silly, so please bear with me. But the first people that ever told me about this stuff were the people from the Lyndon LaRouche movement. The people who were talking about how governments, elite circles, and things like the CIA put out publications to change the way people think. They put out publications to alter modern culture, and a lot of theories expand into the Zodiac Killer, Charles Manson, especially Manson, perhaps even more so than the Zodiac Killer, when they wanted to destroy the image of the hippies by looking at them and saying, hey, sex, drugs, rock and roll are bad. If you go down that pathway, this is what's going to happen to you. You're either going to be like Charles Manson, or you're going to be one of his brainwashed followers. And I think that that's somewhat of a fascinating theory, but I mean, how are we really going to find out the truth about what is going on with something like that? But Playtime continues by saying Paul L. Williams wrote a bunch of suspicious books, born in the perfect year to be the actual Zodiac killer, and perfect year for being an actual Zodiac suspect, with the perfect name, too. And I was like, Paul L. Williams, yeah, no one would ever suspect anything about that guy. If he is not CIA, my jaw would fall off. the character he wrote about, Mockingbird Hill, speculative of course, but it could be related, and as we just said, something about Operation Mockingbird. The Black Dahlia was a sicko artistic creation. And yeah, that's what, as we said, surrealist art, and Man Ray was very much into that. I mean, using human bodies to turn them into different shapes and resemble things. And I'm talking about live people. If you ever look at Man Ray's photograph of the Minotaur, I mean, that's what it's all about. And that somebody was trying to do that to Elizabeth Short. The Black Dahlia was a psycho-artistic creation. It was linked to the Zodiac case in several ways through the number 14. The murder of Elizabeth Short was on the 14th of January. The liminal year was 1947. Secret agent, men and psychos were everywhere after World War II, and she was murdered on the 14th day of that year. Now, as far as people coming back to the United States after World War II, yes, 1947, that is very important to note. I mean, there could be something going on there with that, and I really don't want to say too much more on that subject, but I do think we should be aware of that. And 14 is, of course, a reference to the Zodiac Killer Halloween card. And then the final thing that I would say about George Hill Hodel is that somebody left a recent comment on our George Hill Hodel episode when they were talking about a new solution to the Z13 cipher, and that is going to be coming to us from No Excuses, who says, I believe the unsolved Z13 Zodiac Killer cipher reads Dr. Ohelegerodg, and that is a scrambled version of Dr. George Hodel. If you use the key of reasonality solved in the 340 cipher, you will see that the first two letters will read DR, which made me look at any doctor related to the case. Then I found his name, and it fits perfectly using my code. Okay, thank you, No Excuses, and I do like that this solution is not exactly just plugging in the name. There actually is apparently a metric that is used by No Excuses here to get Dr. George Hodel, but I also have to insist, we have many different ways of plugging names into the ciphers. We have many different ways of unscrambling names into the ciphers. What did we say about the end of the 408 cipher? And how it could be a mistake, it could be Robert Emmett. Well, somebody his name is Tony Polito. He's a Zodiac researcher. He came up with a solution to the final line of the 408 cipher that reveals Arthur Leigh Allen. But you might be thinking, wait a second, there are 18 characters in that solution. 18 characters. And Arthur Leigh Allen, if you count up the letters, that is 16. So what's the answer? Mr. Arthur Leigh Allen. And the same way, he has a metric. It's really not just substituting the letters. There are reasons why, and you can find his name online and read his little booklet that he has written for free, Tony Polito. And then also here you heard from No Excuses. It's not George Hodel, it's Dr. George Hodel is the solution to the Z13. I saw an excellent video about this on Rick Hansen's channel. I got really pulled into some of his videos for a while on the Zodiac Killer. He has a lot of things to say about the ciphers and the significance of words. Like, we talked a little bit about numerology and on here before, but I mean, now I don't want to misinterpret anything that Rick is saying, but I think what he was putting out in his video, and once again on Rick Hansen's channel, if you want to see it, it's about how the Z13 actually is a mirror version of name. It's like just name equals name. It's just going, one name is written forwards and name is written backwards. So it's actually kind of a dud, more or less. And the final thing that we'll say about George Hodel on some of the recent uploads is coming to us from Brandon Shin, who is talking about George Hill Hodel's IQ, and he says, George Hill Hodel that had an IQ of 186. That is one of the highest I've ever heard of. That's crazy. And that really is crazy. I mean, I mistakenly said that George Hill Hodel had an IQ of 170 in the first episode that I ever did on him. No, I mean, it's a widely understood widely accepted fact that George Hill Hodel had an IQ of 186. So, as far as having a high IQ, I think the highest IQ that I ever heard of was Nathan Leopold Jr., who was involved with the Leopold and Loeb case, the murder of Bobby Franks, Leopold and Loeb, Richard Loeb. And Nathan Leopold Jr. had an IQ of 210, so says the television. And this is one where we've done one episode on Leopold and Loeb on this channel, and I would invite you to listen to that if you would like. It is very, very general, and when I recorded it, it's also made for people who would have been somewhat familiar with the case, because I thought that Leopold and Loeb were very famous, but I will include a link to that in the description box, and the best way you can support this channel is just by listening. Yes, but it was supposed to be the crime of the century. It was supposed to be a flawless crime, a perfect crime that was committed by these two individuals who thought that they were above society in other ways, and Nathan Leopold Jr. and Richard Loeb, and there's an angle that gets into sexuality. There's an angle that gets into their own destructive tendencies coming out for a variety of reasons. But if you do listen to that episode that we've done here on Black Box Online Radio, you can hear just some commentary about the subject. But I really shouldn't have done that. Maybe we'll do something bigger in the future. I mean, when I say I shouldn't have done that, I should have given a little bit more background information. It's definitely marketed to people who are very familiar with the case, and maybe we can do that with the Zodiac killer stuff, because it's so ongoing. Every Monday is Zodiac Monday days, and we have lots of material to fit into the situation. But the next comment that we have here is, oh, and I should say one more time, that episode will be available in the description box. The next comment we have comes to us from Chimmy Tab, who left one on our episode, Are Most Serial Killers White Males? And Chimmy Tab says, just say that white people are stupid animals and leave. We'll believe you. No, no, I don't think white people are stupid animals. Goodness gracious. I mean, I'm white myself, and even if I weren't white, I wouldn't say that people are stupid animals. And just today, I mean, I was going to mention that comment in the AMA anyways, and just today, Sherry B. Campbell wrote into the channel saying, if idiots can't see that this is clearly blacks just evil wanting to torture and kill whites, then where is their GD brains? I wonder what GD means. Yeah, I don't hate black people either, so, this is one of the points where I hope that people will listen to that episode that Chimmy Tab was commenting on. That it's called Are Most Serial Killers White Male? Because we go through some of the statistics, we go through some of the demographics, and we actually look at, well, it's kind of the whole point is that white people are not stupid animals. That's all I have to say about that, but no hatred here. Um, that really is the point, and I'm sure that Chimmy Tab is just trolling and being ironic. I do appreciate that you listen to any of those episodes, Sherry as well. Sherry left the comment on the execution of Lamarcus Davidson, and that is a case that really got people very much up in arms about stuff, but I think that I would just encourage people to listen to that one as well, and that would also be a good one to share on social media. Our next one comes to us on an episode that we did called The Murder of James Allen, and the full title is Plastic Mask, The Murder of James Allen, and they're talking about the assailant Esteban Carpio. There was a viral video of him going around where he was entering a courtroom wearing a plastic mask on his face, also known as a spit guard or a spit shield, after possibly sustaining certain injuries after falling out of a window, or perhaps a case of police brutality. And Dish Soap has written in, man, I resist the staff inside the mental hospital, and my eyes were never as swollen as that. Charge them cops with aggravated assault and put them in prison. And if you look to the graphic now, you can see a photo of Esteban Carpio after he was involved in this altercation with the police. What happened was he got into first an altercation with Sergeant James Allen, the officer that was talking to him in an interrogation room, and then he pulled Allen's own gun and shot him. Then he jumped out of a window, a third-story window. He landed on somewhat of a grassy embankment, and he tried to run away, and then he was apprehended. And the police said that he sustained all of these injuries after falling out of that third-story window, and Carpio was going to try and plead the insanity defense and saying not guilty by mental disease or defect. However, it really appears that, I mean, I don't really think that he gave up without a struggle. And yes, of course, they wanted to retaliate. I don't really expect that the police officers did not use excessive force, but at the same time, charge them with aggravated assault. I'm really not sure if they would be charged with aggravated assault in terms of the law based on resisting arrest, as well as all the injuries he would have actually sustained jumping out of a third-story window. I mean, let's see anybody else jump out of a third-story window and see how it goes. See if you don't get some injuries of some sort depending on how you land. But that is once again our episode, Plastic Mask, the murder of James Allen, if you'd like to hear more about that. Now, we're going to go over to one more comment here, and that is coming to us from Apex Prowler, who left something on our episode, Arthur Leigh Allen's partner. And Apex Prowler has written saying, I used to think it was Leigh Allen, but there's absolutely no evidence linking him to the Zodiac, and he was too creepy to have a partner. I don't believe the mob guy. His information is very much after the fact. Now let's talk about Arthur Leigh Allen as a Zodiac killer suspect, because we have a very big thing to do, and that is that I think that the angle of looking at an individual named Donald Lee Cheney is so much more valuable than looking at Arthur Leigh Allen as a suspect. To look at Allen as a type of fall guy, because I think almost all parties agree that Allen was a creep. Almost all parties agree that Arthur Leigh Allen was a pedophile. Arthur Leigh Allen was somebody who was not very well liked. He was very despicable. But I think that it's important to note that Arthur Leigh Allen could have been working with Don Chaney unknowingly. That Don Chaney could have been somebody who was committing the murders even, and trying to make it look like it was Arthur Leigh Allen because he was such an unlikable individual that he was the fall guy. That would not mean at all that he was Allen's partner. That would instead mean he was more like a stooge or a patsy or somebody who didn't really going on, and I really don't like this term, but useful idiot is another thing that some people say out there. And we also have to remember that the fingerprints, side palm print, and DNA are all pointing away from Arthur Leigh Allen. So in that respect, I do agree with what Apex Prowler has had to say in the Zodiac Killer mystery. But I would actually like to do something that I have been meaning to do for a while, and that is to go over to a particular article about the Zodiac Killer that I've wanted to discuss on this channel. Part of me had wanted to do an entire upload about this, talking more about Arthur Leigh Allen as the Zodiac Killer, but I really didn't know how valuable it was to read off just one article and then talking about the merit of that article for an entire upload. So I thought an AMA would be a good chance to talk about Arthur Leigh Allen as the Zodiac Killer suspect. And this article that was written by Thomas H. Lord, thank you, Thomas, for the article, and it's called, Who Do You Think the Zodiac Killer Is, and What Proof Do You Have? The Zodiac Killer was most likely Arthur Leigh Allen. I see, that's a good gripping headline, isn't it? But he was good at not leaving evidence behind. He was good at hiding. He died at the age of 59 from complications of diabetes. There was a lot of circumstantial evidence, but there was no physical evidence linking him to the murders. Wait, what? No physical evidence linking him to the murders? Not a good start. He had been a school teacher at an elementary school, and he was also the girls' trampoline coach, but he was fired for liking little girls too much, according to the principal of the school, who could not comment further on the firing. And we should also say that when it comes to working in elementary schools, Leigh Allen was also a janitor, a custodian at places like that. Allen had been in the military and he walked with a limp, but when committing the murders, he wore an extra pair of shoes to throw off investigators. He had neighbors lick stamps and put them on the envelope saying he was allergic to the glue. The FBI cracked the ciphers, and there were rants against the detectives working on the case and journalists writing stories about the murders. Allen was a nasty drunk who hated his mother. He was angry toward young couples who were about to start a family. After he got fired from the elementary school, he started shooting young couples at lovers' lanes in Northern California. He wore a Zodiac brand watch, and he owned the same type of typewriter that was used to write the letters. Allen used airplane glue on his fingers to hide his fingerprints. First, I should say, that's the first time I've ever heard anyone coming forward saying that Arthur Leigh Allen actually used airplane glue on his hands to hide his fingerprints. Yes, of course, the Zodiac Killer talked about that, but I'm not familiar with anyone saying that about Arthur Leigh Allen. If it is true, maybe Maybe it's written somewhere, but I don't know that exact line. But yes, Alan did walk with a limp. And someone did notice that after the Stein shooting, but Arthur Lee Allen, it matches almost zero physical descriptions of anybody in the Zodiac Killer mystery, and they even talk about this in some of the things that were explored by Graysmith and Lyndon Lafferty and other Zodiac writers. We talk about this in the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, when they're like, well, I mean, you're an overweight, moon-faced, balding guy. I mean, you don't really seem to look like any of the physical descriptions that the witnesses have been talking about in the Zodiac world. But with Alan, he wore an extra pair of shoes to throw off investigators. This is the stuff that I have a problem with, because Robert Graysmith wants to nail this guy Arthur Lee Allen for the Zodiac murders as well as a host of other crimes. He always has to have some type of assumption. First, physical description. He says, well, it's probable that the Zodiac killer was more moon-faced than we actually thought. Okay, that's one assumption. Assumption two, well, it's possible that he not only wore different extra pairs of shoes, what he's actually talking about is Graysmith expected that the perpetrator at Lake Berryessa, or maybe some other places, would have cut off the soles of military-style boots and glued them on to a pair of sneakers so that he would leave military-style boot prints, when in reality, it's Arthur Lee Allen, and that's how he's disguising his footprints and his boot prints. I think you can get the idea. So that's assumption two, that he's gluing different boot soles onto his sneakers. Third, Arthur Lee Allen is balding, right? Well, how do you explain the description by Brian Hartnell that at Lake Berryessa, when the Zodiac Killer is wearing the hood, that there is hair coming down in between the sunglasses, and that they can see that this person has somewhat long hair? Cecilia Shepard also saw the Zodiac Killer without the hood on and did not say that he was bald. So how do you explain that? Well, Graysmith is like, he must have been wearing a wig under that hood. And then that becomes assumption three. To nail Arthur Lee Allen as the Zodiac Killer, you just have to build up more and more assumptions. And let's go back to Thomas's article here. Allen was convicted of molesting boys at his trailer park while he was in prison. The killings in the letters stopped. The killings in the letters resumed 6 months after he got out of jail. One time the police almost caught the Zodiac and they chased him, but he disappeared into a large forested park. I'm not familiar with that one either, a large forested park. As far as molesting boys and talking about molesting girls, yeah, the Zodiac did not target boys, and the Zodiac did not target girls. Yes, of course, we could say Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, but David was 17, Betty Lou was 16. They were definitely what we would call teenagers. And I've said it once and I said it again. Another shout out to Breanne Clark. Where is the evidence that a pedophile committed any of the Zodiac murders? If anything, Lee Allen was a sexual predator who molested his victims, and the Zodiac Killer was not. And I thank Thomas H. Lord for the article there, but I think that's where we're going to have to leave it now. But please stay tuned because we have a lot of things to go through in this AMA. Thank you to everybody who's left comments so far, but we will be right back after this message. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a Teespring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello, and we are back. The first thing I would like to say is if you're listening to this on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, Happy New Year to you. And if you're listening to this on the night of December 30th, Happy Night of December 30th. And our next comment comes to us from Professor Stewart, who asked the question, Ned, have you ever given any thought to doing a book discussion on Drew Beeson's new book on the Yuba County Five? And the new book is called Out of Bounds, What Happened to the Yuba County Five, as you heard by Drew Beeson. I've definitely thought about it. First, I have to read the book in its entirety, and I think then we would have a better discussion. We've brought Drew on the channel a couple times to talk about his book, Citing It on the Zodiac Killer, where we look at the suspect, Donald Lee Cheney. And we also talked about a suspect that he has in the D.B. Cooper mystery named Ted B. Braden. I once accidentally referred to him as Tom B. Braden on one of these uploads, and that was a silly mistake on my part. Tom Braden was a real person, and it appears Ted Braden and Tom Braden both had some CIA connections. Tom Braden was the guy who was behind the book Eight is Enough, and then he was the host of Crossfire in the 1980s, but a CIA operative and CIA personnel all the same. And there are a lot of people that were some high level political players that are working more or less on the inside that were on that show Crossfire in the 1980s. I mean, Tom Braden would sit across from Pat Buchanan and Arno de Borgrove, Howard Phillips, people who are somewhat famous within circles, but they were definitely more influential than a lot of people gave them credit for. But yes, if once I'm done reading that book, which is at the top of my reading list for 2021, I should say I have purchased it, and it's in my Kindle. What do we call it? Kindle library or something like that. After I'm done reading that book, sure, we can talk about the mystery of the Yuba County Five. Going on to our next comment, we have one on Zodiac killer William Joseph Grant, and that is from Shoot the Radio. And he asked the question, first of all, I would like to say, greetings from Virginia. I live in the Shenandoah Valley. Hey, neighbor. And I just wanted to leave a comment and ask, have you ever done a video pertaining to the radian theory with the Mount Diablo map, and maybe exploring that a bit more? I haven't done an exact video on the radian theory and the Mount Diablo map, but instead, we've mentioned this a lot when we do our discussions on Gareth Penn and Michael O'Hare, of course, but we will do a little bit about that on Friday when we talk about the murder of Nikki Benedict. So always inviting you guys to listen to some future episodes, and to people who are listening to this months later, we will hopefully have a big special on the murder of Nikki Benedict that is coming out this Friday, and that's here on the channel. But the next thing to say is, I think that it's a very fascinating theory, but the thing with the radian is an angle of 57.29 degrees, and the thing that I kept obsessing about was, who would be using this? Does it have to be a PhD? Does it have to be a mathematician, somebody like Theodore Kaczynski? Or would it be somebody else, maybe who is working with architecture? And giving a shout out to YouTube user Jamie Hendrickson, who said that pilots and sailors would also use radians. So I more or less wanted to try and find something that was outside of Gareth Penn's well, outside of his radius, let's say. I mean, I know that was tacky, excuse me. But we will talk more about that on Friday, but we haven't done a specific upload about the radiant theory or the Mount Diablo code, but we will look into that in the future. And on the same episode, Zodiac Killer William Joseph Grant, always inviting you guys to check out some of this stuff here on the channel, we have one that comes to us from Ronnie Apocalypse, who says, Dude, I just find it difficult taking any criticism from yourself to any opinion that doesn't fit your own, regardless of logic or fact. You do not hide your scathing bias, yet speak and dismiss an idea after admitting to not reading it. Take a few steps back and observe yourself and your videos as if you were someone not related or friends in any way at all connected to you, period. What he says about not reading it, he means that we were discussing the William Joseph Grant theory, and Lyndon Lafferty put out his book, The Zodiac Killer Cover-Up, also known as The Silent Badge, and what I said was, I haven't read that book yet. Even to this date, I haven't read the book. You claim to be a Zodiac blank, insert adjective, but upload a video giving your confident reasons why this man's idea is wrong, but yet you didn't read it. Once again, that's the book, not the suspect. Couldn't finish it because you disagree with this, and that shows everyone what? Your feelings block your judgment at any attempt of being open-minded and honest. You don't hide this either, but I promise you, you will be denying and attacking. Watch. All I ask is that you remove this sort of zodiac and word that mag describe your ability. I don't know what that means. I've never heard of or respected a person not reading their enemy or false varying opinions, so when you asked, can you answer properly and not guess to what you imagine this book is about and a theory is, also a little bit lost. You literally took a rumor, a 50-year-old gay bash rumor, went flying off the deep end, and are now pulling 3 or more people in as also bashing gays, and therefore that alone explains their same opinions. Yes, this really is his deductions. You, Black Box Online Radio, then further embarrass yourself by dedicating 6 minutes of talking time out of 20 minutes, literally verbatim, repeating, X bullied or did this, therefore the author, knowing him, also hated him and set him up. I have no proof, just a hunch. I am also an author and can disagree without reading people's materials because, damn it. This explains your very tiny subscribers and views and comments on your page. Okay, firstly, did you hear that? We don't have that many subscribers here on Black Box Online Radio, so if you're listening, now is a good time to hit that subscribe button. Apparently, I am in a great need of them. And if you like what you hear on this channel, you can always hit that like button. In terms of discussing material, though, on this channel, the episode is called Zodiac Killer William Joseph Grant, and it's about Grant as a suspect, not simply about Lyndon Lafferty's book, The Zodiac Killer Cover-Up, also known as The Silence Badge. I think it would be somewhat irresponsible to do an episode that was talking about the contents within that book, The Silence Badge, if we were to put up Zodiac Killer, the Silence Badge, also known as The Zodiac Killer Cover-Up, and we did a book discussion without reading it, sure, but at the same time, we can pull ideas out from things. I have read part of the book, mind you. Part of it was uploaded onto Google Books. But I do have to insist that it's about the suspect. And Ronnie Apocalypse, I hate to tell you this, bud, but William Joseph Grant was not the Zodiac Killer. And yes, I'm being assumptive in some places. Yes, I theorize in some places. And you do sometimes try to follow where your instincts lead you, or maybe you think that you're going down some insightful pathway. And what he is talking about there is that saying that Les Lundblad was accused of bullying William Joseph Grant because he was gay, and that Lundblad had some type of axe to grind with William Joseph Grant, and that's why he became one of the larger proponents that was uh, looking into Grant as the Zodiac Killer, and then Lundblad was feeding information to Lafferty. From the segments of the Zodiac Killer cover-up that I have read, there are numerous interactions between Lyndon Lafferty and Les Lundblad. Les Lundblad, of course, the investigator from Lake Herman Road, who was, seemed like he was trying to persuade Lafferty that William Joseph Grant was the Zodiac Killer. Lyndon Lafferty would go on up until his death trying to insist that he had the guy, that it was William Joseph Grant. He gave him the pseudonym George Russell Tucker. But as far as being repetitive, going and restating things and like talking in circles and being complacent, absolutely, I do those things. I do get a little bit repetitive and redundant. Excuse me, this is a work in progress. But a lot of people will have left a very similar comment on the channel when they say, hey, you're talking about somebody, but that you haven't read their book. Once again, it's about the suspect, and we can pull from different pieces of material. And there are a lot of things that people have shared about Lyndon Lafferty. I mean, like I've heard Lafferty in his own words in interviews, as well as articles that have been written about him. So there are different types of source material, but I'm the first person to admit this is a social commentary channel. Some people do amazing deep dive research. I listen to their stuff all the time, but this is a social commentary channel. I'm just some guy who follows along with the documentaries and podcasts and reads articles and reads books just like anybody else. I'm not a Zodiac, insert whatever adjective. I think he meant more like researcher or writer. And as far as being an author, I haven't written any books. Maybe in the future. But, yeah, so that's something that I want to be very clear about. And I think that many people who follow along with the show can understand that. And an important thing is, though, I actually heard this on an episode of the Stones Unturned podcast, just citing where I got it from. You can use different research methods as long as you meet in the middle and you're coming to a similar conclusion. And I've really found this when I interact with some of the people who are the deep dive researchers, and then we often seem to get, we often seem to be somewhat on the same page. But right now, it is New Year's Eve, and I would like to talk about some of those things because in regards to books that we have read on this channel, we have had a lot of book discussions this year, more than I ever thought would happen, especially some of these Zodiac Killer ones. At this time last year, we were still going through the Great Zodiac Killer hoax of 1986, and that's when a lot of people really got pulled into the channel. I mean, countless times people have written in and just saying, hey, thank you for providing a skeptical alternative to the Zodiac hoax theory, because a lot of people were quite curious about it. The idea that one person committed one person wrote letters taking credit for the Zodiac murders, and that person was not the killer. And I, like many people, when I learned about that, I was like, now wait a second, is that really true? So I read the book, and we did our 17-part book discussion on the Great Zodiac Killer hoax of 1986. A lot of people tuned in, and they were like, they were sharing a lot of the same ideas that I was, and the things that they're curious about, the things that they're skeptical about, the things that they really have concerns with in the Zodiac hoax theory. And because everyone was responding so well to that, we then did a book discussion on The Most Dangerous Animal of All by Gary Stewart, and that went in the absolute opposite direction, where we could see that Gary Stewart is a fraud. I don't know how anyone could read that book and not think that it was something fraudulent. Susan Mustafa, the co-writer of that book, even said so in the documentary version that was put out on FX and is available on Hulu, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, their multi-part series. She openly said, well, what we did was we paraphrased the police reports, and you can see how clearly it is done in the book. They just paraphrase these police reports about the Zodiac Killer. There's an enormous narrative on Earl Van Best as a Zodiac Killer suspect, and then there are just a few things about the actual crime scenes that are just pinned in, and really it's about the early life of Earl Van Best. It seems like Gary Stewart wanted to write a biography of his father, Earl Van Best, and he wanted to make it sell, so he added in this fictitious narrative about Earl Van Best being the Zodiac Killer. And in an interview that was shared with me from Richard Grinnell, he sent me an interview that was with Thomas Horan, who was talking about the Zodiac hoax theory once again. And it's quite shocking to hear Thomas Horan say something positive about who? Tom Voigt. But he's like, hey, Tom Voigt sometimes is on top of things. Once he learned that Gary Stewart was putting out this book about the most dangerous animal of all, it was Tom Voigt who first debunked it and showed all of these things that I would go into in that book discussion. And what I used to say was, if you ever want to read the book The Most Dangerous Animal of All by Gary Stewart, you can listen to our 8-part book discussion here on this channel, 9 if you get the bonus link, and then everything you will want to know about that book is in those uploads. The valuable things about Earl Van Best, the psychological profiling, learning about his childhood, and then you will hear about just some things that have been paraphrased from the police reports in there that is just stapled on in the end. So we did that one. The next book discussion that we did was Time 17 by Gareth Penn, and then Zodiac Unmasked by Robert Graysmith. And I really found that people seemed to respond better to doing these suspect uploads. Apparently not Ronnie there, as you heard that review, but a lot of people really wanted to hear more about the suspects as opposed to following along with a particular book discussion. I am so glad, though, that I read Zodiac Unmasked this year because of all the info that Graysmith has shared, or learning a little bit more about how Robert Graysmith thinks. And at that time, I mean, people were tuning into these book discussions and they were, showing a lot of enthusiasm for them. So I was trying to do every other day, like, would be a different subject. Like, every other day would be Zodiac, and every other day would be a different subject. And that's how we got to talk about things. Are most serial killers white men, or the murder of James Allen, or some of the other material that we've been going through here. The execution of Lamarcus Davidson, that was another one that we were going through. And at the time on this channel, for me, the year 2020 has been, well, it has been pretty lousy. We've had the global pandemic. We've had a lot of plans canceled. We've been unable to do many things. However, to start off the year, I really think the channel went into a different direction, and a lot of it was because of that book discussion involving the most dangerous animal of all, and as well as the one about the Great Zodiac Killer hoax of 1986. But that, of course, we started in 2019, and we were really looking at more things related to the Zodiac Killer, but something about January of 2020, I just really found that we were exploring the ideas in somewhat of a different way. Oh, you want to talk about the IQ thing that we said at the beginning about George Hodel and having an IQ of 186. Somebody who has an IQ of 180 is Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel, and we did one upload about him and the Israeli government in 2020. It seems like ages ago because I mean I would never talk about that stuff now about like Israeli politics here on this channel, but thank you to that one person who listened to it. However, I really found that in terms of our understanding of psychology and true crime, I think the channel really went to a new level. And it was from doing those uploads, the psychology of serial killers. We also did the neuroscience of serial killers, where I had the opportunity to talk to a neuroscientist about the things that I was curious about on the channel. And then the normal lives of serial killers, because that's the stuff that is really shared in these pieces of commentary, the documentaries, the podcasts, and the articles. When you're listening to the family members who have lived with this person who was a serial killer, when you're hearing the descriptions and the police investigations, then they're uncovering things about the person's daily life. And that was a requested topic that somebody shared when they were like, can you do an episode on what is the normal life of a serial killer like when they aren't committing the murders? How do they fool people and how do they disguise people? All of these things are available here on this channel, the normal lives of serial killers. And I think that you can also look at the evolution of this channel by looking at the backgrounds. We had the pink bubbles going for the longest time, but that was an effect that was put in by YouTube, and then they started removing those, and they they just leave it as an old-fashioned black box. And then we put in the snowflakes, and that was another way to follow along with things. And um, I I love some of those old recordings, like when we were talking about not only the Zodiac killer, but also Count von Cosel, who was a man who removed a body from a grave in Key West, Florida, and he would take pieces of silk and coat it in wax and put it on her corpse to preserve her, and people could see him dancing with her in the windows. That is mentioned in the playlist, The Best of BBOR, mind you. You find some fascinating stories. And we also did one on Gift of Love, the death of Daniel Huffman, that was also done in that tradition, and that's still trying to just look at a greater understanding of humanity. Daniel Huffman was a guy who donated his kidney to save his mother's life, his grandmother's life, excuse me, grandmother's life. They made a movie about him called Gift of Love that is features Eldon Heston and Debbie Reynolds. Debbie Reynolds is the grandmother, and then Daniel Huffman was given a scholarship to Florida State University, and he's becoming somewhat of a media sensation. He went on to commit suicide at the age of 25. No one has any idea why, no suicide note or anything. And I mean, it's a fascinating story, but I always wanted to say that this channel is exploring ideas, wanting to have a greater understanding of humanity, as well as just going through some material that I am curious about and I want to share with you guys. And was trying to do an episode every day here in 2020, but as you see, the channel has taken some different shapes, and now we're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But I do have the ability to put out some longer content and to talk to all of you about things. And we're gonna keep going with some of these Zodiac Killer uploads and the AMAs as well on Wednesday, like this one. And thank you to everybody who listened to that episode that we did for Christmas. Those are also some great things to do, and I'm all about morbid curiosity, or what I call miserable curiosity, looking at things that would make the average person miserable and still trying to find some good in it. But that is going in its own direction, and sometimes you just want to get away from that and just say Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone, and Happy New Year. If you're listening to this around New Year's Eve time, I would extend that to you as well. We often start these AMAs by asking some questions that are borrowed from someone else's channel, and I was listening to an episode I really shouldn't say episode, a lecture from Jordan Peterson's lecture series last night, and people asked him a question in the Q&A session. We have one episode about Jordan Peterson here on this channel, The Psychologist. It's called Jordan Peterson, Genius or Fraud. And what they asked him was, do you believe the sole purpose of religious ideology is to further the procreation of a species? Talk about a dramatic change, right, in subject material. And I just thought about that one because I used to be so passionate about that and to say that, yes, absolutely, everything humanity does is just about reproduction, and it's about the continuation of one's own species. I even wrote my college entrance essay about that, that is the one commonality that we have. I guess I would say that I have this overwhelming desire, and I say desire in a bad way, to try and link all of humanity together, to just always find this commonality among all the belief systems and all of the ways that people are thinking and all the races. And that's why it's so weird when somebody writes in that's or comments like that, why don't you just say that you hate white people or something? It's like, no, absolutely not. And I know that's a little bit of YouTube trolling, but we definitely do get comments like that. And I mean, like, the question is, how do you respond to them? But but right now, do I really think that that's all what religion is? No, absolutely not. And Jordan Peterson didn't either. He said the purpose of religious ideology is to remind you who you are, and I didn't really like that answer either. When I was 26, it's really 25 and 26, I started reading up a lot more about Eastern religion and like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, not only Dharmic spiritualities, but also the Tao and what's that one called? Kyundo-gyu. Yeah, I mean, I can spell it out for you, but I can't pronounce it correctly because it turns out I was pronouncing it wrong for a long time. It's a Korean religion called the Rite of the Heavenly Way, and I was looking into things like that. Ooh, excuse me. Bad omen right there. But I was really more focused on non-destruction, and that's what I thought the purpose of all of these thought patterns and ideologies in the world was non-destruction, like what people would describe as peace, that it has to exist in both the external world and within the mind. Like if you get rid of all the wars in the world and there's no fighting, but you still have slavery, then you have not achieved world peace because you haven't dealt with the internal struggles of the mind, so you had to eliminate destruction in both the mind and the external world, and that's actually what morality is trying to get you to do. Do I still think that now? I'm 32 now, by the way, and no, I don't think that now because what is the purpose of all of that stuff? The only way I can answer that is a couple days ago, I went to Domino's and I got pizza. And sometimes I go to the convenience mart and I get those honey buns that have like the vanilla frosting on them. And I like to go for a walk in the park, and sometimes I go for a drive and I just look at the sunset. And then there are other times when I stay up late watching something on the internet, and it's really like you get a really curious idea, and that's it. All that stuff there. That's all I have to say. What is the purpose of religious ideology? That Domino's pizza, honey buns, walking in the park, sunsets, and curious ideas. Well, so that's kind of one of those things that I would almost like to leave the show on, but we just have a couple quick questions left. Lawrence Kane, of all people, that's right, spelled the same as the Zodiac Killer Suspect, asked me, "What is the name of your Instagram?" BlackboxNed88. Just sharing that one more. And all right, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope that everybody's having a good New Year celebration. And of course, we already said once, but you could hit that subscribe button. Apparently, I am in dire need of it. And you can visit the Instagram page for the bonus podcast, as well as just thanks for listening. Yeah, and that episode on Leopold and Loeb will be available in the description box. As I said, very general stuff, but we're now talking about some ideas that we're curious about here. So, I would just like to say thank you so much for listening. Happy New Year, and until next time.